Hey, just remember again, in this section, the Ramchal is, we're still talking about the Niddah of Nikius, and the need ultimately to go ahead and purge oneself from negative, we were speaking about negative behaviors, and how when it comes to negative behaviors, a person has to be mindful not just of the primary aspects of the negative behaviors, but even of the secondary aspects of the negative behaviors, and the same is true with midos, negative character traits, that a person has to be careful to identify negative character traits and to also understand that negative character traits often have many branches and appendages. So over here we're speaking specifically regarding gaiva, regarding arrogance. He's describing the different types of bale gaiva. So last two lines, kuf chav hey, v'yimatze ge'e acher, there's another type of arrogant person, sherotze liyos nirsham harbe b'ma'alosav, ulehisyachid b'drachav. Such an individual, his gaiva manifests itself in that he wants to stand out. He wants to be separate and distinguishable from everyone around him, and he wants everyone to know how special he is. Ad shelo dai shelo sheyehalalu kol ha'olam al ha'ma'alos asher choshev sheyesh bo. So it's not enough for people to praise him about the milas, about the attributes that he thinks he has. Page Kuf Chav Zayin. Ela sherotze she'od yirbu lahosef petilasu shua anav sheba'anavim. So this is interesting. So this Baal Gaiva is such a Baal Gaiva that he needs everyone to know how humble he is. you hear this? Meaning, so in this category again, his Gaiva manifests itself in, I need everyone to know how incredibly humble I am. Nimsa ze miska'e ba'anvoso. So this person, essentially again, his arrogance manifests itself in his humility. And the truth is, the way he goes ahead and tries to get covered is by, quote unquote, running away from it. But so what he's describing over here, of course, is false humility. Is false humility a person who kind of gives an outer expression of humility, but Lamaisa deep down is that expression of humility is just another vehicle through which to self-glorify. V'hinei ge'a kazeh, yosim atzo tachas ketanim eno harbe, o tachas nivzim sheba'am sheyachshov laharos bazeh tachlis ha'nava, ukvar lo yirtze b'shum tar mitari agdula, v'imayin b'chal ha'iluyim v'liba om rikirbo, in chacham v'anal koni ba'aretz. They will say, so what's amazing about this is as follows. Remember, why is Ramchal going through all of this? He's going through all of this because a person might say to himself, you know what, I'm not a Baal Gaiva, I'm not arrogant. But yet what Ramchal is saying is arrogance manifests itself sometimes in so many different ways. And sometimes a person who might even be actively trying to show himself as being humble, sometimes the excessive pursuit of humility can in and of itself be part of the pursuit for self-glorification. That's the incredible. And remember, I will say, understand what Ramchal is trying to do in this chapter. He's trying to highlight to us how self-aware we have to be, because this happens to us all the time in life. I do something for a particular purpose. I think I'm doing it for purpose A, but in fact it turns out that when I really introspect, I have a totally different agenda. So my intention, quote unquote, might be to be humble, but is my humility motivated by a sincere sense of humility, or is my humility masking some deeper level of arrogance? And again, one only could answer that if at the end of the day, one is self-aware. He goes on, Va'amnam, Geim Ka'ela, Afal Pishalach Ora Marin Asmam Anavim. And again, these types of arrogant individuals, even though they present as humble, Lo yibatzru michsholos lahem shebel yidi asam tiem miskalis gavasam. So we'll say, so this is incredible. Ramchal says, here's what's important to remember. At the end of the day, your true persona always comes out. Listen to his mashal over here. He says, so a person might pretend like he's very humble, right? A person might present like he's very humble. But l'maisa, again, if there's an underlying gaiva that's driving everything that he's doing, shabli lidi'asam tiem miskalas gavasam, even without realizing it, his gaiva will come out. Listen to this. Kileva hayotzim ben hacharasim. So literally translated, this is like a spark that comes out from the metal workers, right? He goes on. He says, "Ukvar mashlu chacham zichron levracha." Listen to this great mashal. Mashal labayis malei tevim. So sometimes a person can be compared to a house, like a silo is probably the better, filled with straw. Chorin v'chorin haya. Bebayis chorin v'haya hataven nichnas mahen. La'achar yomim hischil osa teven shaya b'soch habayis shaya b'soch hachorim yotze yada hakol ki haya osa habayis shel teven. Let's listen to this mashal. He says that if a person has, let's say, a house or a storehouse that's filled with straw, so what happens? And it's all sealed up. There's only one problem over here, which is there are some holes in the walls of the house. It's only a matter of time until what? Until the straw comes out through the holes. So we'll say, so what's the nimshal? The nimshal is you could only keep things closed off for so long. Very profound idea. At some point in time, the real you always comes out. The real you always comes out. It might come out through the holes in the wall, right? It might come out through the little cracks in the foundation, but it always comes out, which I will say, if you think about it, is such an incredible idea, because so many of us, right? We have our external persona and our inner persona, and sometimes we work so hard on creating a facade, right? Now, creating a facade is helpful at times, but at some point in time, the real you is always going to come out, right? Whether it's going to come out like the Gemara says, Bikoso, Bikiso, Bikaso, right? Like 3 ways the Gemara says you can tell the true nature of a person: when he gets angry, when he drinks, and how he spends his money, right? So sometimes our true persona comes out like that. Sometimes our true persona just comes out at random moments. So what the Ramchal is also saying is an incredible musar. We invest so much time and energy creating the facade. Imagine if instead I used that same time and energy actually perfecting a personality, right? It's like going ahead and, if the house is crumbling, you could always put another coat of paint on it, right? And the truth is, it's very nice, and it'll look nice for a little while, right? Until the next brick falls. Okay, I'll paint that over also. So you could have 15 layers of paint, but for all that time and effort that I was painting, I could have also perhaps laid a few new rows of bricks, or maybe it's just time to build a new house. So I could go ahead and create a facade and pretend like issues don't exist. But at some point in time, the straw will come through the cracks, right? At some point in time, the paint peels back and the facade begins to crumble. Ramchal is telling us, put your effort into building a true sense of self and not just erecting that facade around a broken edifice. He goes on, you can't hide who you are. Let me say it differently. You can hide who you are. You just often can't hide who you are forever. At a certain point in time, the real me comes through. And we'll say ultimately, and coming back to Gaiva for a moment, if a person is truly a Baal Gaiva, so ultimately again, that Gaiva will come out through his actions at some point in time. At some point in time. It may take a little bit of time, but it'll come out. He goes on, he says, because unfortunately, again, the way that they're living their ways, ultimately, again, are anava psula, false humility, shiflus muruma, a misleading sense of lowliness. So we'll say, then there's another type of Baal Gaiva. So it's just interesting, by the way. Remember, what's his point over here? We'll say this is not a sefer about Gaiva. I mean, we can learn a sefer about Gaiva also, but this is not a sefer about Gaiva. What he's trying to show is something very important, which is here you have one negative trait. Gaiva. Now, granted, it's a biggie, right? Gaiva that I remember again back to his introduction to this. Gaiva is a significant challenge. But Lamaisa, what he's trying to show is how many different ways one negative midah can manifest itself. And I both say, this is just one midah. This is just one midah. This is one area of challenge. Yet you see how many different directions it can manifest itself in. This is why we require vigilance. One more line. We'll say then there's another type of bal gaiva, where their gaiva, this is interesting, their gaiva remains in their heart. Lo yotziu ela maisa. It actually never manifests itself into action. Avayichashvu belilvavam shekvarhem chachamim gidolim. Rabbi said, listen to this. In this last stage of gaiva, these people actually, this bal gaiva, it never comes out actionally, right? Meaning his actions are humble in nature. But how does his gaiva manifest itself? This bal gaiva thinks he's very wise. He thinks he's very smart, right? He thinks he's very wise. Yodei hadvarim la'amitam. He knows the emes. He knows the emes. V'shalo rabim yachkemu kamohem. And the truth is, he feels most people are not as intelligent as he is. Okay, so you hear this, right? So this type of bal gaiva, on both sides, remember again, this bal gaiva often is the most dangerous. Because this bal gaiva, mamish, he thinks he knows everything. He's got it all figured out. He's smarter than everyone and everything. No one else knows better than him. No one else has anything to contribute. Everyone else is foolish and backwards. And what's the problem with this bal gaiva? He learns from no one. See, Rabbi say, if you think you're smarter than everyone else, then there's nothing to be learned from anyone else. Lo yoshisu leiv el divrei zulasam b'chashvam ki ma shekasha aleim lo yenak el acher ma shesichla mar lahem kol kach baruhu v'kol kach pashatu actually achushu l'divrei acholkim aleim im mishonim in achronim v'safek in etzlan asarasa. So let's listen to this. So this bal gaiva, again, his gaiva doesn't manifest itself actionally. So he might actually present and behave like a regular person. He doesn't want kavod. He's not looking for accolades. He's not looking for recognition. But this bal gaiva, he knows more than everyone else. He's the smartest. There's nothing else to gain. There's nothing else to listen to. So we'll say, so what happens? What happens with a person like this? A person like this, first of all, is never makabel musar. And I both say, to never be makabel musar in life is a terrible, terrible thing. Everyone in life needs to have someone who gives them musar, right? It's good. It's good to have someone who could tell you like it is, right? Especially if it's someone who loves you and cares about you, right? So they're not coming to knock you down, chashem. They're coming to build you up. But Lamaisa, this bal gaiva doesn't accept musar, isn't makabel anything. Why? Because he knows everything already. He's got it all figured out. And once you've got it all figured out, you're receptive to nothing. If you're receptive to nothing, Rabbi said, then you live in your bubble of self-inflated ego and your limited knowledge. You're not open to growth, you're not open to change, and you're certainly not open to introspection. So we'll have to stop over here. We'll pick up at Meretz Hashem with Gaiva tomorrow. More Gaiva to be had tomorrow, Meretz Hashem. Tomorrow, actually, we will close out the Gaiva section, and we will Meretz Hashem begin with Kas. Yeah, Meretz Hashem. All right, Rabbi, say good morning. Let's begin. Beautiful daf ahead of us today. Today's daf is Chav Ches 28. And we are picking up on Chav Zayin on base 27b. Rabbi Ami, Rabbi Yochanan. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 lines up from the bottom. Our shir this morning is dedicated by our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Cheshvan, Adam Yehudi Ben Zev, Le'ili Nishmas, Adam's grandfather, Moshe David Ben Shalom, and in honor of Adam's grandmother, Helen Nachman, his parents, Eli and Judy Ben Zev, for serving as incredible role models. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu grant them arichos yamim v'shanim. And I will say with that, let us begin. Rabbi Ami, Rabbi Yochanan. Umod Rabbi Shimon. So let's remember again, yesterday we were discussing the halachos concerning Shalya, the halachos concerning the afterbirth, the machlokes in the Mishnah about what what happens if there is a shalya babayis. So ultimately, again, the Tanakama telling us that it conveys tumas meis because in shalya below vlad. Rabbi Shimon saying that ultimately, again, the vlad dissolved inside of the shalya. Suppose say, so what does that mean? So Bepashtos, it either means batal barov, that was one possibility from yesterday, or this other possibility that Shittas Rabbi Shimon is sofo kitchila. So this interesting din by tumah, that the end of the tumah must be like the beginning of the tumah, i.e., anytime you introduce any type of foreign substance into a davra hametame, it loses its ability to convey tumah. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan, Umod Rabbi Shimon, She'imo Tmea Leida. Rabbi Shimon agrees that in this case of shalya, when the mother delivers a shalya, when she expels a shalya, she has tumas leida. So the Gemara says, Amra Husav Rabbi Ami, Asar B'Lecha Taimed Rabbi Yochanan, Damar Kra. What's the reason for that? Now the interesting part over here is that, remember, Rabbi Shimon is going to say that ultimately there was a vlad in there, but it dissolved. So there's no tumas meis in the home. Despite the fact that there's no tumas meis, Rabbi Yochanan holds, or Rabbi Shimon will say that there is still tumas leida. What's the reason for that? Damar Kra. Isha kisazriya v'yalda zachar, because the pasuk says, if a woman kisazriya, we'll say kisazriya literally means she becomes pregnant, but that's lashon of zera, right? The zera will take hold and she'll become pregnant. V'yalda zachar, afila lo yalda ela kein zriya, kein shazriya tmea leida. So we'll say the drasha is, even if a woman only gives birth to something that looks like the zera, which means Rabbi said, even if she gives birth to something that is dissolved, ultimately, again, she will still be tamei tumas leida. That's Shittas Rabbi Shimon. Rish Lakish says as follows: Shafir shetarfuhu b'meimav. So we'll say if you have a fetus, right? Literally, again, that shetarfu literally means that you literally it means mixed it, right? So like Rashi brings down like beating eggs. The idea is you moved it intensely to the fact that the fetus moves around inside of the meme of the waters. So the Gemara says, "Nasa kemeshin is babala tzuraso." It becomes like a corpse whose form has been messed up, whose form has been destroyed. So what I say, the idea over here is that if you go out and you take the fetus inside of the shalya and you move it around vigorously, it'll dissolve. Once it dissolves, ultimately, again, it becomes like the case of a mace, of a corpse whose form has been lost. Now, what the Gemara is going to introduce to us is the interesting idea that if you have a corpse, shenes balbalat suraso, it no longer conveys tumah. So we'll discuss this now. So it says the Gemara. Look at Rashi just a moment. Rashi says, "B'meimav shedichu bahen." So ultimately, again, that now the baby, right, the fetus dissolved ultimately again inside of. Oh, thank you, Greg. Inside of the waters. Shenisbal, Rashi says, "Nimchak kulo kimo sarav shenisbar zevein shado kayemes." So says the Gemara, "Amir Rabbi Yochanan the Reish Lakish meis shenisbal bala tsuraso min alan detar." So how do I know that if you have a corpse and the form of the corpse has been lost, right? Nispabula means just it's been erased. Erased is the wrong word. Nispabula literally means mixed up. I'm sorry? Obliterated. Okay, but obliterated is a strong word because obliterated sounds like it doesn't exist at all. We're going to see that doesn't have to be the case. But we'll use nispabula. So how do you know that it's tar? Says the Gemara, Ilema mehadam Amar Rabbi Shabsai Amar Rabbi Yitzchak midagla va'amar Rabbi Yitzchak midagla Amar Rabbi Shabsai meis shenisraf. If you have a corpse that was burned, v'shlado kayemes. So this is an interesting case. The mace was burned, but the bodily form is intact. Look at Rashi. V'shaldo kayemes gufo kayem shalonis bazer ha'efer va'adayim nira keshalim. So also this would be a case of where the body was burned, the ashes have not been spread, so that the form of the body is recognizable, but lemaisa, again, the body itself has been incinerated. So tameh. Ultimately, again, the body conveys tumah. So the Gemara says, "Ma'isa hayat." This once happened. Utimalo psachim gidolim, top of chavches. V'tiara lo psachim kitanim. So we'll say this is actually an interesting din in tumantara. If you have a home and inside the home is a corpse, so we'll say the halacha is that the corpse tumah spreads throughout the home, and spreads through doorways, as long as those doorways are significant doorways, what we call psachim gidolim. So psachim gidolim will be doorways that are at least 4 tfachim in size, versus psachim kitanim, which are doorways less than 4 tfachim in size. So therefore the Gemara says over here, this once happened, Maisa Haya, right? It once happened where a body was burned, but the form remained. And what did they declare? So the body was inside of a home. They declared ultimately again that the tumah went through the large entranceways, but did not go through tiaru. They were matar the small entranceways. The kadayakta mine, and we make a diuk based on that to say what? Taima de shlado kayemes. The reason why ultimately again, the reason why that the tumah went through the larger doorways was because ultimately the body was intact. I should say the form was intact. Halav hachi, but we infer from this that what? That if the body was incinerated and the form was not intact, then what? Tar. Then Rabbi said, then halacha lamaisa, the tumah of the corpse would not spread through the larger doorways as well. To which the Gemara says, so that's the raya. So the Gemara is bringing this as a raya to say that what? That if you have a body that's been incinerated, as long as what? The form of the body is intact. We'll discuss how this could happen. The form of the body is intact, then essentially the body still conveys tumas meis. The raya that the Gemara is bringing up is this case happened. There was a body that was burnt, but the form remained intact. And Chazal, when looking at the rabbis, when looking at that home, said the tumah goes through the large doorways, 4 tfachim, doesn't go through the smaller doorways. So essentially you see that a body that's burned, but whose form is intact, has a regular din of a mace. Adrabah. So which the Gemara can make the opposite diuk. Dok minei lahai gisa, make an opposite diuk. Shalado kayemes hu detarlo psachim kitanim. I can make the different diuk. Rabbi say the different diuk is like this: when the form is intact, ultimately again, that's when they went ahead and they were metayr the smaller entranceways, right? The entranceways of less than 4 tfachim. Halav hachi, if the form was not intact, psachim kitanim nami temein. I would have perhaps said that what? That even the smaller entranceways would conduct the tumah as well. Why? The kol chad v'chad chazi la'afuke chad chad ever. Because each of those smaller entranceways, although they're too small to take out the body in its entirety, you could take out one limb at a time. Both said the logic behind that idea that a doorway of 4 tfachim or more allows the tumah to pass through is a din in essentially any doorway through which, technically speaking, the corpse could exit the home will conduct tumas meis. If the entranceway, or if the doorway, I would say, is too small for the corpse to go through, then the maisa, it kind of acts as a barrier for the flow of the tumah. So the Gemara says I can make the opposite diuk. The opposite diuk would be like this: it's only when the corpse is intact that la maisa what? That it's only the large doorways that allow the tumah to flow through, and the small doorways obstruct it. But Allah la maisa, if the form was not intact, maybe tumah would even flow through the smaller openings. Why? Because although a whole body can't get through those smaller openings, a limb could. So therefore you have no raya. To which the Gemara says, Amrali Ravina Ravashi, Amrali Ravina Ravashi, Rabbi Yochanan Damar Kiman, Rabbi Eliezer. So who does Rabbi Yochanan hold like? Rabbi Yochanan must hold like Rabbi Eliezer. What does Rabbi Eliezer say? So both say, so remember again, Rabbi Yochanan is telling us that halacha l'maisa, meis shenis balbalot suraso is tahar. That if a corpse no longer has its form, it no longer conveys tumas meis. So we're trying to figure out ultimately where does Rabbi Yochanan get that from. So we tried to bring in a raya from this brisa. That raya didn't work. Now another raya. Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Eliezer. This nan, here we go. Efer Serufin. So we'll say if you have Efer Serufin. So if you take a look at Rashi for just a moment. Rabbi Yochanan, the Palagalei de Reish Lakish, the Bari Lemeimar, the Meis, the Shenis Babelot Suraso Tameh, the Amar Kiman Rabbi Eliezer. So let's listen to this. So Rabbi Yochanan ultimately holds as follows. He holds as follows. So the Gemara says this line, Efer Serufin, if you have the ash of a body that has been burned, so what's the halacha? Rabbi Eliezer Omer Shir Berova. Rabbi Eliezer says that the shear, ultimately again, of the ashes is a quarter of a kav. Rova kav. Heichi dami meis shenisraf ushalado kayames. So we'll say, what's the case ultimately again of a corpse that was burned, but the form is intact? In other words, I will say, generally we would assume those two things don't go together. Amar Abaye, kigon shesarfu agabe katav. So I will say one way would be if the body was burnt on top of a katablo. What's a katablo? Rashi says, or shaluk the kasha the iran israf esimames. We'll say, so for argument's sake, if you were to have, for lack of a better term, it's like a large leather mold, right? So we'll say, so if you can imagine, and let's say the mold was the shape of the body, and you burnt the body inside of that mold. So essentially what would happen is the mold would keep the form of the body intact. So you would have a body that was burned, but lamaisa, again, the form is still intact. Okay, Rava Amar Kegon, Shesarfa al Gabi Apudarim. Rava says it could also happen where you went ahead and you burnt it on top of Apudarim. Rashi says, Apudara, Even Shayish, Vitarvayo Kegon Shasos Bais Kibol. I was supposed to say, or if you had a marble mold. Same idea. You had some type of mold where that was molded to the form of the body, so the body was burnt in that mold. So again, the body is burnt, but lamaisa, the human form, the human shape of the body is still maintained. Ravina Amar Kigon Di'ichrachi Achruche. Ravina says, we'll say this can happen in a case where the body is burnt but not incinerated. So we'll say, so you can have achruche, it literally means singed. The idea is the body is burnt totally on the outside, but lamaisa, the form of the body, the mamosh of the body is still intact. So the human form is still intact. Okay. Tanrabanim. Hamapeles yad chatucha v'regal chatucha. So we'll say, so again, just want to point out over here, so this happens to be a fascinating discussion in general about what happens when halacha lamaisa, the form of the body is no longer intact. So what do we say? Meis shenis babula tsuraso. Ultimately, again, does it convey tuma, not convey tuma? Ultimately, again, that is subject to machlokas. I will say, just want to point out to you, as some of you raised this already after yesterday's shir as well, we begin to see that when it comes to a mace, there are also different ways in which a mace conveys tuma. So the body could convey tuma. Remember yesterday we saw corpse dust conveys tuma. We also know etzem kisaora, a bone fragment conveys. Remember, bone fragment and corpse dust are two different things. So I was just pointing out different forms of tumas mace are conferred in are transferred. Ultimately, again, in different ways. Good. Tanrabanon. Hamapeles yad chatucha v'regal chatucha imot me'aleida. Let's listen to this. If a woman, we actually saw this before, if a woman expels, yad chatucha regal chatucha means literally a fully formed hand or a fully formed foot. As we're going to see again, fully formed literally means fingers, toes. The idea is she's expelling one limb over here and not an entire baby. So what's the halacha? Imo tmei leida. So the mother is tamei, tumas leida. Vein choshishin shema miguf atumba. And Abba said we don't assume. Let me say it differently. What we assume is what? We assume that if she's expelling a fully formed hand or a fully formed foot, where did that come from? That came from a fully formed baby. And we don't assume that came from guf atum. Guf atum, Rabbi say, means a not fully formed baby, a stunted baby. We don't assume that. Rav Chisda v'Rab bar Avuna Damri Tarbayu ein nosnin la yemei toar. So we'll say, now this is very interesting. So comes along Rav Chisda and Rabbi Ravuna, and they say, it's true that she gets tumas leida, but we will not give her yemei tohar. Both remember again, this every tuma, normally the halachas of tumas leida says that what? A woman gives birth, depending for a boy or a girl, there are a certain number of days which she is tameh, and then a certain number of days in which she is tahar. So even if she bleeds, that's called dam tohar. So I'll say here the Gemara is saying, as much as when a woman expels a fully formed limb, we're going to give her tumas leida, but we will not give her yemei tohar. Why not? This is incredible. Why? My taima, ema hirchika leidasa. See, Rabbi say, here's the concern. Look at Rashi. Ema hirchika leidasa. Hare kama yamim shiyatzarov havlad leivarim ukvar avru yemei tohar shala v'lo yadina me'emas nimni. We'll say, listen to this. Because in this case, when she expelled a limb, what are we concerned about? We're concerned about the fact that maybe what's happened over here is she's been expelling pieces of that baby for some prolonged period of time without even realizing what it is that's happening. So because of that, it's impossible for us to mark exactly when her Yemei Tumah or Yemei Tohar would actually start. So therefore, again, we can't give her Yemei Tohar. So we'll say, so on one hand, we're going to accept, on one hand, we're saying that when she expels a fully formed hand or foot, we look at that as what? That ultimately came from a fully formed baby. Therefore, that limb will trigger Yemei Tumah. She has Tumas Leida. But we can't give her Yemei Tohar because we're concerned that really what's happening over here is from this aborted pregnancy, she is expelling parts of the baby at different times, so we wouldn't know when to start the clock. Rabbi, so remember again, you can't observe Yemei Tohar without a definitive timeline. Because if you're wrong about your timeline for Yemei Tohar, then what? Then a man could potentially be having relations with his wife who is a Niddah or a Zava. So because of that, there is no Yemei Tohar without an absolutely definitive timeline. Master Rav Yosef says as follows: Hama peles ve'en yadua mahi pila. If woman miscarried, she expelled something, she doesn't know what she expelled. So teishev l'zachar l'nekeva. Ultimately, again, she has to observe the days for both the zachar and the nekeva. And remember again, what that means is anytime we have a suffix about what she expelled, we give her the chumrus as if she had given birth to a boy and a girl. So to which the Master will say, but if that's the case that we just said before, that whenever a woman expels something and we're not sure exactly what's going on over here, we might give her Tumas Leida, but we'll never give her Yemei Tohar. So I will say, why aren't you concerned about that? To which the Gemara says, Lisnei ulenida. In Echinam it says the Gemara, it doesn't mean that Lamaisa we give her Yemei Tohar, but rather it says, treat her ultimately again like it's a Leida, and therefore again Halacha Lamaisa will give her Tumas Nida. So why don't you just say ulenida? I was supposed to say, don't go ahead and see. So what's coming out over here is as follows: anytime a woman is expelling something, and we're choshesh that it's a leida, is very important. We're choshesh for a leida in that what? We'll give her Yemei Tumah. What will we not give her? Yemei Tohar. Won't give her Yemei Tohar. So says the Gemara, so if that's the case, why don't you just say that she's Tamei Tumas Nida? In other words, leave out Leida. Don't say Leida. Because we'll say, the moment you say that a woman has the status of Leida, that's very confusing. Because in our mind, what does Leida trigger in our mind? It triggers two parts. Tumah Tara. You're saying she only gets Tumah, she doesn't get Tara. So just say she's Tamei Tumas Nida. To which the Gemara says, I can't tell you, I can't do that. I'm Rabbi eternal Lenida, because if we would have just said Lenida, Hava mina mevia karban ve'inonechal. And we'll say, see, here's the problem. If you would have said that she's Tamei Tumas Nida, what that would have meant is as follows. She's Tamei Tumas Nida, but there's the possibility that she also gave birth. Well, if that's the case, she should bring a karban Leida. But what? A yoledes, karban yoledes. But you can't eat the karban, because you're not sure if she's yoledes. Kamash malan dinechal. But the Gemara wants to tell us, no. Also, when she gives birth, we treat this as a definitive birth, right? You treat it as a definitive birth, and therefore she's going to bring a karban, and halacha lamaisa what? That karban is going to be consumed. But lamaisa, again, als suffix, because we're just not sure about the timeline of everything, so we'll give her tumas leida, but we can't give her yemei tohar. Amar Rav Huna. Really, it's actually a fascinating concept. That halacha l'maisa, again, you could have situations where a woman will have tumas leida, but will not receive yemei tohar, because essentially the Gemara is saying over here is any time that she's expelling pieces, we accept that the body parts come from a fully formed fetus, therefore there's a leida. But because we don't know what's being expelled when, it's difficult for us to know when to start the clock. If you can't start the clock, so to start the clock for Tumah, that's never a problem. For Yemei Tohar, that's going to be the bigger problem. The Gemara goes weiter. The Gemara says, Amar Rav Huna, Hotzi ubras yada vechzira. So listen to this. Baby extends its hand and then pulls it back in. So what's the halacha? Imo timea leida. So we'll say the halacha is once the baby extends its hand outside of the mother, ultimately that's called a birth, and the woman is timea leida. Shnei amar vahi belirita vayitain yad. So we'll say amazingly enough, right? It quotes over here. right? The pasuk by Tamar that ultimately again, so the baby extended its hand, and then ultimately, right? Vatikshar al yado shani lemar zayat zarishona. So we'll say, so again, you see from here that what? Extending the hand outside of the mother is considered to be birth. Amazing, even if it draws it back in. Pretty amazing. Mas Rav Yehuda, so Rav Yehuda says as follows, Hotzi ubar es yado ein imo chasheshes l'chol davar. So we'll say here, Rabbi Yehuda says that if the baby extends its hand outside of the mother and then withdraws it in, so what's the halacha? The mother is not choshesh for anything, which sounds like, again, it's not a leida. Amrav Nachman l'deidi mifarshile minei d'Ravuna lachush chosheshes. Yimei toar lo yahavina la ad dinafik rubei. To which the Gemara says what it means is as follows: the moment that the baby extends its hand out of the mother, even if it withdraws it back in, so halacha l'maisa, that's a leida. That's a leida vis-a-vis what? Vis-a-vis what? Tumas leida. But yimei tohar can't begin until there is a definitive birth. Ad dinafik rubei, until the majority of the baby exits the mother. But that's not what Rabbi Yehuda said. Rabbi Yehuda said the mother is not chosheshes for anything, which sounds like yimei tum'ah or yimei toar. To which the Gemara says, "Eina chosheshes l'chol davar midoraisa." What it means is, Rabbi say that midoraisa, the baby extending its hand, ultimately again is what? Is not a birth midoraisa. Aval midrabanan chosheshes, but midrabanan ultimately again you would have to be choshesh. So I will say, Rabbi Yehuda says that halacha l'maisa, really when a baby extends its hand out of the mother and then draws it back in, what's the status of that hand extension? What's the status? Really is just saying hi, right? But lemaisa again, that is not a leida. That is not a leida. That's not a leida vis-a-vis, right? Tumas leida or yimetar. It's nothing. It's nothing, right? Oh, right. Leida only occurs when mamish there's an actual birth. Again, we'll discuss the definition of that. This is a dirabanan. A dirabanan v'hakra ka'amar. The Gemara quoted a pasuk. Rabbi say, so that's not a shayla. Why? Kra asmachta ba'amar. Rabbi say, remember again, first of all, in general, you should just know, any pasuk that the Gemara quotes from anything that occurs in any of the stories of Bereshis is never the source for, almost never, the source for a din d'oraisa. Right? Rabbi say, aside from like Piri of Arivia and Avram and Achai, right, there's certain other things. We have a general klal of ein lemeidin davar mekodem matan Torah. That in general the halacha is we do not learn any binding halacha from anything that occurred prior to Matan Torah. But say even Bris Milah is not learned out from Avram Avinu. I mean, the concept is learned out from Avram Avinu. But Lamaisa, again, the Torah goes out of say in Parshas Tazria to once again say, B'yom hashmini yimol b'sar ar laso. Even though, again, the psukim themselves are written in Parshas, right, in Parshas Lech Lecha, right? But Lamaisa, again, at the end of the day, so therefore, that pasuk is nice, that pasuk is fine, but that pasuk is an asmachta. So therefore, I will say the way the Gemara ends off, halacha l'mai says that when a baby extends its hand outside of the mother and then draws it back in, so l'maisa again, l'maisa, that is not a birth. That is not a birth. And therefore what we'll say is midrabanan, the mother is chosheshes. Midrabanan will give her tumas leida, but right, and only tumas leida, not yimei toar, no klak tzar yimei toar. So midrabanan will say that's something tumas leida, but midaraisa nothing's happening or nothing has happened. Good Mishnah. We'll say vaytam apelos tumtum va'androgynous. We'll say an interesting case. What happens if a woman miscarries, right, and she expels a fetus that is a tumtum and an androgynous. So also remember again, tumtum means there's some type of membrane that covers up the reproductive organs, so you can't tell the gender. Androgynous means that the fetus has both qualities, right? Both sets of reproductive organs. So what's the halacha? So we'll say, so meaning the shaila, of course, is we'll say, so what do you do legabe like tumas leida? So we'll say, so remember again, as opposed to in the previous case, in the previous Mishnah, we're trying to figure out, was there a leida? Was there a leida? In this case, there was a leida. Here the challenge is, what is the fetus? So what's the halacha? Teishel v'zachar nekeva. So we'll say now teishel v'zachar nekeva essentially means is you get the woman gets the chumras of both, which means she will go ahead and get the longer period of tumah as if she had given birth to a girl, and the shorter period of yemei tohar as if she had given birth to a boy. Rabbi say, what happens? Tumtum v'zachar v'androgynous. Right? So the Gemara says, I'm sorry, Teishle v'zachar nekeva. Tumtum v'zachar, androgynous v'zachar. Rabbi say, what happens if she expels two fetuses? And one of them is a tumtum, one of them is a zachar, right? One of them is tumtum, one of them is a male, or one of them is an androgynous, one of them is a male. What's the halacha? Teishle v'zachar nekeva. So we'll say again, the halacha is because we don't know the identity of the tumtum and the androgynous, she'll have to observe the chumras as if she had a boy and a girl. So we'll say, so again, with that, remember again, always the same idea. She'll observe the longer period of Yemei Tumah for a girl and the shorter Yemei Torah of a boy. Next, Teishle Zachar Nekeva. Tumtum Nekeva, right? Tumtum Nekeva. I'm sorry. Teishle Zachar Nekeva. Tumtum Nekeva. Androgynous and Nekeva. What happens if she gives birth? If she expels a tumtum and a Nekeva or an androgynous and a Nekeva? So we'll say in that case, Teishev the Nekeva Bilva. So we'll say in that case, this is an easier case. Why? Why? Because here, Lamai, so we'll say, what do we know? She had a girl. So we'll say, so there is a girl that was born over here, so because, or I should say a female fetus. So because there's a female fetus, then ultimately what? She's already observing the Yemei Tumah and the Yemei Torah, ultimately again of a girl. Yatsa mechotach o mesuras. So we'll say, what happens if halacha lamaisa, the fetus comes out in pieces? Right? Now we'll say mesuras, Rashi says over here, is derech mar galosav. It comes out feet first. So what's the halacha? Mishayatsa ruba harihu kiyalud. We'll say once the so we'll say, so again, whether the baby comes out, whether the fetus comes out in pieces or whether it comes out feet first, the halacha is the same, which is once the majority of the body has exited the mother, that is when birth is considered to have occurred. Yatsa kedarko, what happens if the baby is born normally, head first? So what's the halacha? So the ad sheyetse rov rosho. Once the majority of the head exits the mother, then ultimately again the baby is considered to be born. Ve'ezehu rov rosho. What's the majority of the head? Mishiyatsa padachto. Once the forehead emerges. So I say interesting halacha. So once the forehead emerges, ultimately again that's called a leda. That's number one, right? If the baby is born either, if the fetus comes out either in pieces or feet first, you need the majority ultimately again of the body to exit the mother. To which the Gemara says, Hashta tumtum luchudei v'androgynous luchudei teishev l'zachol in a keva. So I'll say now that we said that if the mother births a tumtum or an androgynous, so already the mother has to observe both the days for a zachar and a nekeva, the chumras, which means again, you may tuma for a nekeva, you may tohar for a zachar. So tumtum v'zachar, androgynous v'zachar mibai. So why do you have to add in that second case of if she's expelling two fetuses? One is a tumtum, one is a zachar, or one is an androgynous, one is a zachar. What does that matter? So we're supposed to say, what is that? Why would we think that the halacha changes? I'll tell you why. So the Gemara says it's the rechmau de tema hovan Rabbi Yitzchak. So we're going to see. We alluded to this Gemara on Sunday, and we're going to Meretz Hashem see it in just a few days from now as well. We'll get into the sugya. Isha mazra'as tchila yolad zachar. So we'll say literally what it means is if the woman emits seed first, ultimately again she has a boy. Ish mazriya tchila, if the man emits seed first, we'll see exactly what Chazal are referring to over here. Then ultimately again yolad es nekeva. Ema, I would have thought, midahai zachar, hainami zachar. So I would have thought, therefore, if one of the babies, right, if the identifiable fetus is male, that must by definition mean that what? That the androgynous and the zachar is male as well. In other words, I will say, if we're assuming that lamais again, that the gender would be the same for both of them, to which the Gemara says, Kamash malano, ema shneim hizri b'basachos zu zachar, Zuzachar v'zunikeva. There's also a possibility that what? That the man and woman emit seed at the same time. Again, we'll see exactly what this emission of seed means, but therefore again, one could be a boy, one could be a girl. And therefore again, halacha l'maisi, even in the case of where you have the androgynous and a zachar, tumtum and a zachar, ultimately again, they'll have to observe the yemei tumah and yemei toar, ultimately of a nekeva. Amrav Nachem Amrav. Tumtum va'androgynous. So what's another very interesting halacha? Tumtum and androgynous, shera'u loven o odem. So let's listen to this case. If you have now, we'll say this is talking about now an adult tumtum or androgynous. So we'll say, so what happens? Shera'u lovan. So these individuals either have a white emission or a red emission. So I'll say, here's the problem. The loven emission looks like keri, right? Ultimately, again, it looks like semen, and the odem looks like dam niddah. What's the problem? it's not clear what the gender of these people are. So I'll say, so here's the issue. If a man has a red emission, it's not a problem, right? If a woman has a white emission, it's not a problem. So, right? So it's all right. It's only a problem ultimately, again, if the man has a white emission and the woman has a red emission. So what do you do over here in these situations of gender obscurity? So I'll say, so what's the halacha over here? So if the tumtum are androgynous, have these emissions, ein chayavan al bias mikdash, vein sarfan al nesat truma. So we'll say if they entered into the Beis Hamikdash, so ultimately again they would not be chayiv for entering into the Beis Hamikdash in a state of tumah, right? And furthermore, again, if they were to touch the truma, we would not burn truma as a result of coming in contact with someone who's tameh. Now Rashi points out you would be tolen, or essentially what we would do with truma in this case is we would suspend it. We wouldn't do anything with it, but Lamaisi wouldn't burn truma. However, what happens? Ro'u loven ve'odem ke'echad. Rabbi say, what happens if the tumtum and androgynous see this person, meaning tumtum or androgynous, see both a red and white emission? So here in chayav al bias meitash, they will still not be chayav for coming into the Beis Hamikdash in a state of tumah. We'll see why that is. Aval sarfan alenas at truma. But lamaisa, if they touched truma, we would burn truma that they touched. Shene emar. We'll say, what's the reason for this? Mizachar va'ad nekeva. So we'll say, so first of all, now what the Gemara is asking over here is as follows. The reason for this, the positive the Gemara is quoting over here is about entry into the Beis Hamikdash. So remember again, what did the Gemara just say? That if the tumtum, let's just go with androgynous, even easier. If the androgynous saw both a white and red emission, so it looks like the androgynous emitted both zera as well as damni. That's what it looks like. So what's the halacha? So again, if they emitted one, so the halacha is they're fine. If they enter into the Beis Hamikdash, not a problem. Touch truma, not a problem. Quote unquote, not a problem. What happens if they had the androgynous has both emissions? So if it entered into the Beis Hamikdash, then halacha might say it would not be chayiv for entry into the Beis Hamikdash in a state of tumah. But if it touched truma, we would burn the truma. Why is it not problematic if they entered into the Beis Hamikdash? Shne'emar mizachar va'ad nekeva. Because the Bible said the pasuk when speaking about a tamei person entering into the Beis Hamikdash says someone who's tamei mizachar va'ad nekeva. Amud beis tishalchu zachar vadai nekeva vadois v'lo tumtum va'adrogynous. The Bible say, when are you chayiv for entrance into the Beis Hamikdash in a state of tumah? Only if you meet the criteria of zachar unikeva, defined gender. If you don't have defined gender, then halacha l'maisa you are not chayiv ultimately again for entry into the Beis Hamikdash in a state of tumah. So let's say that's what I'm supposed to say. So again, just want to point out over here, so halacha l'maisa is very interesting. So therefore, again, this is a technicality. This is gzeras hakasiv, right? So the pasuk says mizachar va'ad nikeva. So only if one has defined gender, ultimately again, is one chayiv for entry into the Beis Hamikdash in a state of tumah. But the tumtum and androgynous who do not have defined gender, so halacha l'maisa, again, they're not chayiv. Le'maseiles, what says this supports this? Tumtum v'androgynous shera'u loven o odem. If a tumtum and androgynous, so we'll say in this case is an either or. Either had a white emission or a red emission. Ein chayav al bias mikdash ve'in sarfan al nesat truma. They would not be chayiv for entry into the Beis Hamikdash in a state of tumah, nor would they be chayiv nor would we burn truma that they touched. Ra'u loven ve'odem. But if the tumah and androgynous saw both a white and red emission ka'achos, ein chayav al bias mikdash, they would not be chayiv for entering into the Beis Hamikdash in a state of tumah. Aval sarfan alei said truma, but lamaisa we would go ahead and burn truma that they touched. My timer, what's the reason? So we'll say, so the idea that we burn truma, that I understand, right? Why do I understand that? We'll say, why? Because the man of shach, they're tamei, right? Whether a tumtum and androgynous is a man or a woman, if they had both a red and white emission, whatever you are, one thing is clear, which is you're tamei, right? So therefore I understand why if they touch truma, the truma ultimately again has to be incinerated. It's tamei. The bigger kasha is, why are they not chayav for entrance into the Beis Hamikdash in a state of tumah? Lav mishum shenemar mizachar v'ad nekeva teshalechu zachar v'adai nekeva v'adais v'lo tumtum v'adrogynous. We'll say it must be because of the pasuk. The pasuk explicitly says zachar ad nekeva. Only one who has defined gender is chayiv for entry into the Beis Hamikdash in a state of tumah. So we'll say it's a pasuk. It's a pasuk. Amar Ula, lo. Ula said, no, I don't think that's the svara. Hamani Rabbi Eliezer. Who's your opinion? It's Rabbi Eliezer. This nan, Rabbi Eliezer. So this is very interesting. Rabbi Eliezer says, Hasheretz v'ne'elam mimenu. Al ha'elam sheretz u'chayiv, ve'inu chayiv al ha'elam mikdash. So let's listen to this. Rabbi Eliezer says as follows. If you entered into the Beis HaMikdash, ultimately again, and you enter into the Beis HaMikdash in a state of tumah. And I will say, what happened? And so he says, Al helam sheretz v'enu chai v'halam mikdash. Look at Rashi. Al helam sheretz. First, sheretz v'ne'elam. Obeniv la sheretz v'ne'elam. So also, according over here, the pasuk talking about someone who became tamei. And the pasuk goes through different types of tumah. A person could contract and enter into the Beis HaMikdash. So for example, let's say a person came in contact with the sheretz. And what happened? They forgot they came into contact with the sheretz. So what's the halacha? So we'll say if you came in contact with the sheretz and you forgot that you came tamei with the sheretz, and then you entered into the Beis HaMikdash, that's the type of tumah that you are chayiv for. However, the eno chayiv al ha'elam mikdash. So we'll say if halacha l'maisa, if you entered into the Beis HaMikdash and you thought you instead were going to the JCC, right? That's called Hela Mikdash. You did not even realize that you were entering. It's nice JCC, right? Right. So ultimately, again, you didn't even realize that you were entering into the Beis HaMikdash. In that type of situation, ultimately, again, Rabbi Eliezer says you are not chayiv. In other words, you're chayiv for he'elam tumah if you forgot about the tumah but realized that you entered into the Beis HaMikdash. That's the case where you're chayiv for entry into the Beis HaMikdash in a state of tumah. But if you totally didn't even realize you entered into the Beis HaMikdash, you're not chayiv for that. Rabbi Kiva says v'ne'ela mimenu v'hu tamei. Rabbi Eliezer says v'ne'ela mimenu. Even if the matter is obscured from him, so he'elam tumah hu chayiv v'hu chayiv al he'elam mikdash. Ultimately, again, so Rabbi Akiva says, same idea about say, helam tumah you're chayiv. If you forgot about the fact that you were tamei and you entered into the mikdash, you will be chayiv for that. If you don't even realize that you're entering into the mikdash, you're not chayiv for that. Va'amrina and my benas. We'll say again, they both kind of seem to be saying the same thing. What's the nafkamina? Sheretz unavela ika benar. We'll say here's the fundamental nafkamina. To Rabbi Eliezer sarabba inan adiyah the ibe sheretz itmi ibe nevela itmi. We'll say according to Rabbi Eliezer, it's important for the person to know at some point in time the defined source of their tumah. I have to know, did I become tamei through a sheretz or did I become tamei for an avela? Now granted, when I enter into the Beis HaMikdash, I forgot what type of tumah, but lamaisa I must have originally known the type of tumah. Rabbi Akiva savar lo ba'inan. And Rabbi Akiva says you do not even need to know, again, the exact source of the tumah. Rabbi Eliezer, Hasam ba'inan diyada ibe sheretz itmi ibe nevela itmi. So we'll say ultimately again. So therefore, we'll say what's the logic over here? What we're assuming is maybe the Gemara is saying that we're reflecting the view of Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer says in life it's not just enough to know that you're tamei, but rather what else do you need to know? What the source of the tumah is. Unless you know exactly what the source of the tumah is, you won't be chayiv for entering into the Beis HaMikdash. So just so we're clear how this is happening over here. The pasuk is talking about a person who entered into the Beis HaMikdash. This is an accident. I walk into the Beis HaMikdash in a state of tumah and I forgot. Right? I forgot that I was tamei. Right? Everyone agrees if you remember that you're tamei, but you don't realize that you're walking into the Beis HaMikdash, you're not chayiv for helam mikdash. I'm chayiv for helam tumah. So I became tamei. I forgot about my tumah and I accidentally walk into the Beis HaMikdash. That's when I'm chayiv for entry into the Beis HaMikdash in a state of tumah. The machlokes over here between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva Rabbosai is, do I have to know? Is it important for me to know the exact source of my tumah? In other words, so we'll say, do I have to know the exact source of my tumah, or is it enough for me to know that I was tamei? Then I forgot about the tumah, entered into the Beis HaMikdash. Rabbi Eliezer says, in order to be chayiv for entry into the mikdash in a state of tumah, you must have at some point known what? The exact source of your tumah. Sheretz or nevela. Rabbi Akiva says, no, it doesn't matter. As long as what? As long as you know that it's new at some point in time you were tamei and then forgot that and entered into the mikdash, you're chayiv for that. So the Gemara wants to suggest that maybe argument reflects the view of Rabbi Eliezer. So also remember again, let's plug this back into our tumtum and androgynous case. What's happening in the tumtum and androgynous case? What's happening over here? The tumtum has what? has both a red and white emission. So essentially, what are we saying about the tumtum? Either way, what? Either way, you're tamei, right? Whether you're a man or you're a woman, you're going to be tamei. Maybe that's not true. Maybe halacha l'maisa, the reason why we're paskening that when the tumtum enters into the Beis Hamikdash after having a red and white emission, that he's not going to be chayiv for entry into the mikdash in a state of tumah is why? Not because of the pasuk of zachar nekeva, but for a different reason. Why? Because he doesn't know the defined source of his tumah. And Rabbi Eliezer says, unless you know the defined source of your tumah, you cannot be chayiv for entry into the Beis Hamikdash in a state of tumah. So to which the Gemara says, Am Rabbi Eliezer hasam ba'inan diyada ibe sharetz itmi ibe nevela itmi. Just like in the case, of a general case of entry into the Beis Hamikdash in a state of tumah, you must know the source of your tumah. You must know, are you tummy with a sheretz or are you tummy with a nevela? Hachanami, ba'inam diadinan ibaloven itmi, iba odem itmi. Here too, by the tumtum and androgynous, Rabbosai, you have to know the defined source of your tumah. If you don't know the defined source of your tumah, then the halachos of entry into the Beis Hamikdash in a state of tumah, essentially what? Do not apply to you. Aval Rabbi Akiva dar mishum to'am mechayev, hachanai mishum to'am mechayev. Also Rabbi Akiva who says, truth is, we don't really care whether you know that you became tamei with a sheretz or with an avela. What matters? What matters? You know that you're tamei. The source really is irrelevant for our purposes right now. Right? So Rabbi Akiva would say, in the case of, so say, here's an afkamina, in the case of tumtum and androgynous, where the tumtum is having, androgynous is having both a red and white emission, Rabbi Akiva says, you know what the halach is? You're tamei. Whether you're tamei as a woman because you're a niddah, or you're tamei as a man because of shikva zera, you're tamei. And therefore, if you enter into the Beis Hamikdash, halach l'maisi, you enter the Beis Hamikdash in a state of tumah. Rabbi Eliezer will say no. You're only chayiv for a case of defined tumah. You have to know the source. If you don't know the source, then halach l'maisi, again, you are not chayiv. V'Rav ma'ishna bias mikdash dolo. So we'll say, why is it that Rav halach l'maisi would say that even if you don't know which source of tumah, right, you have, that halacha l'maisa, you're not chayiv ultimately for bias mikdash. Tichsiv mi zachar va'ad nekeva tishalechu, zachar va'adai unekeva va'adas, v'lov tumtum va'adrogynous. So we'll say, so essentially now, here's what's very interesting. Everyone seems to agree, because no one argues, that halacha l'maisa, right, which is always good, right, that halacha l'maisa, if the tumtum or androgynous have both a red and white emission, everyone is going to agree that if it enters into the Beis Hamikdash, then what? Then halacha l'maisa, it's not chayiv for entry into the mikdash in a state of tumah. Everyone's agreeing on that fact. We seem to have a machlokes as to why. So we seem to have the Rav camp, right? And the Rav camp says, pasuk, mizacha nekeva. The pasuk goes out of its way to talk about gender. Why do you have to talk about gender? Why do you need that there? In other words, we'll say in general the halachas of tumah and tara apply to everyone. So why do you have to say zachar nekeva? To tell me that the halacha only applies to someone of defined gender, not a tumtum and androgynous. The Rabbi Eliezer camp says no. It's a more yesodistic idea by tumah. Tumah, right? You're only chayav for bias mikdash bitumah. If what? If you know where your tumah came from. If you don't know the source of your tumah, you will not be chayiv. If that's the case, ihachi trumanami lo nisrof dichsev hazov ezavol zachar ulenikeva. So also, I want to say the same thing. So also remember again, the Brisa did say that halacha l'maisa in a situation where what? In a situation where the basu, in a situation where the tumtum and androgynous had both a red and white emission, that if they touched truma, the truma would be burned. But if that's the case, why don't you say we shouldn't burn the truma either? Because in the case in the pasuk by truma, it also says l'zachar ulenekeva. So why don't I say the same thing? Same thing. It's that you only burn truma when what? When a person who's either a zachar or a nekeva, clearly defined gender, and tamei touched it. To which the Gemara says zachar v'adai nekeva v'adas v'lov tumtum v'androgynous. To which the Gemara says no. Hahumi baile lechid Rabbi Yitzchak. To Rabbi Yitzchak l'zachar l'rabos es hamitzor l'ma'ayanosav u'lenekeva l'rabos es hamitzoras l'ma'ayanoseha. Both say because ultimately again zachar nekeva comes to include a mitzora and comes to tell us that ultimately again any bodily fluids or liquids that come out of the mitzora or the mitzoras have the same status of tumah as the mitzora, him or herself. So we'll say hainami. Zachar Nekiva. We'll stop over here for today. We'll pick up in Mirat Hashem with the judge. So just to understand where we're leaving off. We're leaving off over here as follows. Everyone halacha l'maisa is going to agree that what? That when the tumtum and androgynous, so we'll say here's what we agree with. Tumtum and androgynous has either a red emission or a white emission. What's going to be the halacha? So halacha l'maisa, again, they're not chayiv for, right? If you touch truma, there's no problem with touching the truma, and not chayiv ultimately, again, for entry into the Beis HaMikdash. That's number one. If the tumtum and androgynous had both the red and white emission, so then what? Everyone is going to agree, no chayiv for entry into the Beis HaMikdash, right, in the state of tumah. Why? Either because of Zachar Nekeva, or because of Rabbi Eliezer, the tumah is not defined, but everyone does agree that what? That if they touch truma, the truma will be burned. The truma has to be destroyed. We'll pick up tomorrow as to why truma is going to be treated differently ultimately again than tumah.